demons to some, angels to others.
While Hellraiser is always a topic of discussion when talking about horror classics or Halloween staples, this classic franchise has gone through endless changes since Clive Barker's first release in 1987. Initially, fans praised the sequels and follow-up films for being true to the franchise's themes and filling in the plot points. But sadly, this has been a downhill process after they went through several budget restraints and production changes while expanding into 11 films, comic books, and additional merchandise. While the franchise was rebooted with an 11th film in 2022, in addition to an HBO television series, fans have often wondered WTF happened to Hellraiser, and today we will explore this in detail. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Origins and creative vision. Clive Barker's Hellraiser. Originating from Clive Barker's novel, The Hellbound Heart, Hellraiser was first released in 1987 and marked his directorial debut in the world of supernatural horror. The film followed the world of Cenobites, extra-dimensional horror entities that worship the priest of hell, Pinhead, and tortured human souls for their pleasure. The first film set the world building for the Cenobites and explained that they used a puzzle box named the Lament configuration to open a gateway to their hellish realm. Every single time a human found the puzzle box and solved it, the Cenobites would harvest their souls and expose them to all kinds of sadistic, torturous experiments. Interestingly, development for the film started even before Barker's novel was published, and he had decided to direct it himself. His vision for the film was a creative blend of horror and eroticism, and Barker managed to recruit many actors and crew from his past works as a playwright. He also had financing from New World Pictures and producer Christopher Figg, and the film was a huge commercial success that grossed over $30 million on a $1 million budget. The film's success inspired about 9 sequels, and there has also been a reboot release in 2022 that brings the franchise total to 11 installments. Franchise expansion, the first sequels and their reception. After the original Hellraiser was a hit in 1987, Tony Randall directed the direct sequel, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, which was released within a year in 1988. Many actors from the original film had reprised their roles in this film, including Lawrence as Kirsty Cotton, whose character ends up in a psychiatric hospital after the incidents of the first film. The plot follows the hospital's head doctor, who ends up unleashing the sadistic Cenobites from the other dimension, and it was quite a thrilling and successful sequel that followed in the footsteps of Clive Barker. Interestingly, this film was greenlit even when the original Hellraiser was in post-production, as they felt that a sequel would explain many unanswered questions from the original film. While Barker greenlit it alongside producer Christopher Figg, he decided that he would not return as a director and would remain an executive producer and writer. The film was described as an avant-garde production that lived up to the twisted visuals of Hellraiser, and it was even described as a more action-filled, campier version of its predecessor. Given the success of these productions, Hellbound was soon followed by Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth in 1992. Directed by Anthony Hickox, this film went through many production obstacles, but they managed to deliver a final product that delved even deeper into the series' mythology. The film followed Pinhead after he managed to resurrect himself, even after being imprisoned in a statue at the cost of absorbing the life forces of the humans around him. The plot then followed Pinhead's rampage, and some fans felt that the film had turned Pinhead from the terrorizing priest of hell to a witty quipster, just like Freddy Krueger. The film explained themes of war, dreams, and how our subconscious links to our desires, and it made prominent use of technology and communication devices to explore the dualities of characters and delving deep into the characters' alter egos and lust-filled natures of the Cenobites. In terms of themes explored and original content, this film was quite a successful entry in the franchise, and it was also quite well received by fans and critics alike. Even though it was highlighted as fairly commercial, critics did praise it for its adult horror themes and marked it as an ambitious project that managed to remain faithful to the plot and themes of the previous film. films. The downward spiral, budget cuts, and script recycling. In 1996, Dimension Films executives ended up messing up Hellraiser Bloodline to such an extent that director Kevin Yagher even demanded that his name must be removed from the credits and replaced with a pseudonym. The film was supposed to explore the Lament configuration's history across the past, present, and future, and the initial vision was to focus on how Hell had transformed over the years as Princess Angelique and Pinhead and the Order took control of the place. While the first two films were independent productions, this film was produced by Miramax, which also hated the cut before things eventually moved to the Weinsteins. Around this time, Pinhead became the star of the franchise as Weinstein wanted a lot more violence and story arcs involving Pinhead. They ended up reshooting and re-editing most of the film, and even replaced Kevin Yagher with Joe Chappelle in post-production. As a result, the directors were given a pseudonym, Alan Smithy, in the credits, and this particular release was so poorly received that all later installments went straight to video. Hellraiser Inferno's release in 2000 marked Scott Derrickson's directorial debut, and the film went straight to video and garnered scathing reviews as it barely focused on Pinhead's story at all. At this point, fans noted that most of these sequels came out of recycled scripts for the original Hellraiser films, with a notably high amount of Cenobites added into the plot. Miramax also wanted a new Hellraiser movie released every few years so they could maintain holding the rights to the franchise, and the entire filmmaking process became less and less concerned with original plotlines and quality horror content, and instead became increasingly obsessed with holding on to the rights and ensuring that the royalty checks kept coming in. At this point, the sequels did not even get theatrical releases and saw repeated plot points and a lack of originality in Hellraiser Hellseeker and Hellraiser Deader. Moreover, Dimension Films really slashed the budgets for these films, and Hellraiser Hellseeker was shot in Canada and had horribly done CGI special effects that did not convince anyone or create a tense atmosphere within the film. In 2005, Hellraiser Deader was shot back-to-back with the next release in Romania to cut costs, even if this created many communication troubles between the crew in America and Romania. The next release, Hellraiser Hellworld, starred Lance Henriksen and Henry Cavill, and it somehow managed to turn something as powerful as the Lament configuration into a browser game. The film took place in a random house and was shot from a found footage perspective, which barely impressed Miramax and resulted in a whole lot of budget cuts for the next films, Hellraiser Revelations and Hellraiser Judgments. These films performed so atrociously that Doug Bradley, the actor who played Pinhead from the start of the franchise, refused to reprise his role and return for the next installment. Even though Hellraiser offered an intriguing blend of horror and eroticism, it was quite sad to see the franchise fizzle out as the creators became more and more uninspired and lazy. Meanwhile, there were a lot of pitches to remake the franchise, have spin-offs or sequels that were turned down until David Bruckner finally made a reboot film in 2022. Brand and identity crisis. Pinhead becomes generic. Most fans would agree that another key reason why the film went downhill was the fact that the film's initial concept had a whole lot of potential to keep the franchise going. It was quite unfortunate that the studios did not put in efforts to capitalize on the original concepts, and instead chose to water it down to keep churning out more and more installments that lacked any real substance. Pinhead was supposed to remain a mysterious and unnamed entity who eventually ended up becoming an icon, much like Freddy Krueger, which took away the intrigue of the franchise and turned it into some generic slasher series. All attempts to make new releases completely missed the point of the original films, and even ended up turning the Cenobites into demons from hell, when in reality they are supposed to be far more complex and individualistic than that. These entities desire pain and pleasure and want to experience these feelings in a sadomasochistic manner, and the franchise truly failed to explore this concept to the fullest. The Cenobites were also not supposed to try and take over the world, in the same way that Pinhead was not supposed to be the overarching antagonist. Sadly, Clive Barker was the only one who truly understood this vision and knew what the franchise was all about, and his lack of involvement truly marked the franchise's downfall.
Your Uncle Frank is in your father's skin and he wants to kill you.
behind the scenes, production turmoil, and creative changes. While we have already explored all the chaos from the sets of Hellraiser Bloodline, this was just the start of all the production turmoil that took place behind the scenes. Dimension Films had many opinions on reshoots and last-minute changes, which not only caused stress in meeting production deadlines, but also caused many disagreements among senior staff. For instance, Dimension Films considered a concept called Hellraiser Hellfire, which would focus on a cult's intentions to unleash the Cenobites into the real world. But budgetary constraints caused the studios to reject this pitch. Moreover, they also dropped Clive Barker from the production over creative differences and barred him from providing assistance or insights on the film. While developing Hellraiser Hellseeker, Michael Lent was first invited by Bob and Harvey Weinstein to work on the script, but his ideas barely made it to the final cut. In fact, he stated that anything that happened after the first 10 minutes in the film was nothing that he could have ever envisioned. This production went through so many drafts, while many executives at Dimension Films and Miramax were being fired, that the final product was almost entirely different from Lent's vision, and the studios hired Carl Dupre and Tim Day to write the film while Rick Boda directed it. Dimension Films first hired Peter Briggs to write this film all the way back in 2002, but his pitch was soon discarded for being out of their budget range. Hellraiser Deader was then written by Neil Marshall Stevens, but it was soon heavily rewritten by Tim Day before it was finally released in 2005. Clive Barker did not have any involvement in the film's production, which was quite tricky, as it is due to language barriers in communications between the American crew and the Romanian set workers. In 2011, the Weinstein Company decided to rush a sequel into production to ensure that they would release something before their rights to the Hellraiser franchise expired. This project, Hellraiser Revelations, was directed by Victor Garcia and written by Gary Tunnicliffe, who also wrote the next project, Hellraiser Judgment. He had been waiting for this opportunity all the way since 2013, when he first tried to make a true Hellraiser film that did justice to the franchise, and he received somewhat favorable reviews for this attempt. Attempts at revitalization, reboot, and future prospects. As a venture between HBO, Vertigo Entertainment, and Roughhouse Pictures, a TV show adaptation was announced in 2020. Mark Verheiden and Michael Dougherty are all set to write the show, while David Gordon Green is slated to direct a major chunk of it. The show is supposed to be an elevated continuation of the series, but it has yet to go into production, even in 2025. While we await more information, we can only hope that this show manages to honor the original series mythology and serve as the fresh start that the franchise desperately needs. Legacy. Why Hellraiser still matters, or doesn't. What started out as a truly original and creative idea could sadly not maintain the same vision, which has resulted in Hellraiser's legacy being a bit tarnished. While fans would highly recommend the first couple of sequels, later installments have failed to deliver the same idea of mixing pain and pleasure and neatly wrapping it in hellish dimensions with terrifying otherworldly entities. Sadly, Dimension Films' involvement turned these classic horror releases into direct-to-video offerings that would extend their holdings of the franchise rights and ensure more incoming royalty checks. However, this came at the cost of no longer truly exploring some of the more interesting aspects of Hellraiser, which caused a huge hit in the franchise's legacy after Barker stopped getting involved behind the scenes. Marvelous verdict. And with that, we have explored everything that went down with the Hellraiser franchise, right from Clive Barker's initial creative vision to later production changes and budget cuts that eventually resulted in the franchise's decline. While Clive Barker created it out of his love and passion for storytelling, the production houses sadly milked it to a point where it became repetitive and lost all of its original charm. We can only hope that the upcoming HBO show manages to live up to its hype and somewhat redeem the franchise's legacy, and we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks everyone.